No Devin Booker, but despite that, the Phoenix Suns go on the road in New Orleans, win game 3 on the road. Remind everybody they're the better team, reclaim home court advantage. We'll talk about how Chris Paul stepped up, what went right, and what went wrong here in today's Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns the past 5 seasons and a contributor at Suns.com and Dime Magazine. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen today and every day. We are here for you every step of the way through this playoff run, including on today's bonus episode, recapping a 114-111 Suns victory on the road in Game 3, taking home court advantage back, winning without Devin Booker, and setting everybody's whole entire psyche at ease, I think is fair to say as well. And the story of the game today, I don't even think it needs to be explained too much why, but I want to talk about how. The story is Chris Paul, and specifically him acting as the primary dude who just said, we are not losing this game, and we are the better team in this series. And with all of that said, the Suns were still sort of on the ropes heading into the fourth quarter, a little bit too close for comfort. I think it's fair to say it was 79-81. The Suns were down heading into the fourth quarter. They were up heading into the fourth quarter, 81-79. And Chris Paul said, look, this is not a game that we can afford to lose. This is not a game that we should lose. And I think he was right to think that. I think the Suns outplayed the Pelicans in this game overall, but it took 15 points in the fourth quarter from Chris Paul, a 28-14 overall, and a lot of reminiscent moments of that game 1, frankly, too, where he's hunting the switch, he's hunting the mismatch. A lot of the time it was Larry Nance, and just getting to his spots, manipulating screens, manipulating space, mid-range, three-pointers, really only 1 3 in this game, in this case, but just complete ownership over every spot on the floor. And that's what he is when he's at his best. But again, it probably shouldn't have been a 3-point game if you're crafting an ideal situation, but the playoffs are crazy. You're without your best player. And in this case, a win is a win. The Suns will take it without a doubt. Chris Paul aside, though, I'm just going to do 2 segments today. So what I want to do here is explain what this game taught us, told us, showed us about the series and this team and everything else. And then I wanted to get a little bit more into this nuts and bolts in segment 2. We will talk about game 4 on Sunday and a little bit more in terms of like the moment-to-moment stuff. I believe Aaron Edwards will join us, so hit that subscribe button, guys, if you haven't already. We have a lot to get to. This series has been far more interesting than I think any of us wanted or expected it to be. But back to just 30,000-foot view. Chris Paul doing his thing, stepping up when it was needed. You had DeAndre Ayton with I believe, 26-point first half, only 2 in the second half, which not going to spend too much time on because it was a positive overall. But obviously, we know the pattern there. Big first half, quiet second half, not always getting Ayton the ball. But those two combined for 56 points, 21 rebounds, and 15 assists. The big 2 when the Suns needed a new big 2 without Devin Booker in there. And this game, with all of that said, what it told us is the Suns are just the better, more experienced team. Like all week with that frustratingly long 2-day break and 3 days between games this week after the game 2 loss, I couldn't help but come back to, no matter what angle we were talking about or which adjustment I was zooming in on in that particular moment, I just kept coming back to, if the Suns can play their basketball, their style, and just get back to what makes them a special 64 win, 1 seed, historically good, franchise best type of team, they can win. They can not only win this game, but they can win it in 5 or 6 games and not make it all that scary of a series anymore. And this game did that to me. This game reaffirmed that it is not, holy crap, the Pelicans, watch out, everybody run and hide, all of that. It is a very good, better than their record, playoff ready team in New Orleans against a team in Phoenix that is dealing with injuries, is going cold at the wrong time, but at the end of the day is better, is more ready, and has been here before, which really was probably the thing that showed up most tonight. Only 5, doesn't even feel possible. Only 5 assists for the Suns as a team tonight, despite 26 assists and overall a lot of ball movement without Devin Booker in there, and 14 turnovers for the Pelicans. You also had a couple of moments, especially that Jaxson Hayes ejection, where the Pelicans just felt like the less ready team. You also had some things where the team or individual players turned back into a pumpkin at the end of the night, a la Cinderella a little bit here. Like, you had Herb Jones not making threes like he had in game 2. You had Trey Murphy not making threes like he did in game 1 and 2. You had Larry Nance having a very impactful first stint in this game, but then all things considered, a very quiet game. He fouled out of this one. He only was 1 of 8 from the field, 0 of 4 from 3. A lot of things sort of came to a head in this game where, even though McCollum and Ingram were very, very good, it evened out. It looked more like these games ought to have looked. And yes, the Devin Booker factor makes it all a little bit different in terms of who's getting the job done for the Suns, but you saw pick and roll, ball movement, and defensive intensity, a focus on the glass, the ability to match the Pelicans blow for blow with their scorers. All of that sort of cropped back up tonight, and in a way that we all should have seen coming. And I feel like I tried to see it coming, although it was a painful break for any person who would have hated for this Suns run to end so soon. Going forward, though, Chris Paul is the best player in this series. And you can't overlook 28 and 14 from him. You can't overlook another double-digit fourth quarter scoring from him. And even though it was a return to that swagger, that physicality, that intensity level, and that execution level that we've come to know from these Suns, it was also, as I said from the very beginning, a vintage, vital performance from Chris Paul. And he was the guy who took this game by the neck and said, we are not losing. We are the better team. We own this series. Let's show everybody. And he did it. And there's not a lot of guys. There's a lot of guys who can feel that. There's not a lot who can do it. And Paul is one of them. And that's why the Suns traded for him. That's why he's going to be a back-to-back All-NBA player in his late 30s here. It's why he is the point guard. Let's talk about some of the other things that went right and wrong, get into some of the other players up and down each of these rosters, some of the other swing moments, just instant reactions here. So we'll get to it in a second. First, though, guys, today's show brought to you by Shady Rays, the official favorite sunglass company of the Locked On Podcast Network as we head into the summer. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that gives you the features of $200 sunglasses for a fraction of the price. That means polarized lenses, well-constructed, durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. In addition, something you won't find anywhere else is Shady Rays' Insane Protection Program. Shady Rays includes lost and broken protection on every single pair. They will send you a brand new pair of sunglasses if you lose them or break them, no matter what happened. So give Shady Rays a try, and if you don't love them, you will pay nothing. Just ship it right back. It's as simple as that. In addition, 10 meals per purchase are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. And exclusively for our Locked On listeners, head to shadyrays.com and use the code LOCKEDON, that's all one word, to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for their best deal of the season. 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses. You had 28 from Chris Paul, 28 from DeAndre Ayton. Those two really the Batman and Robin of tonight's game. A tale of two halves in a lot of ways, but I do want to give a little bit of credit to some of the other pieces of this team, some of the other systematic things that went right, and I'll talk about some of the things that didn't as well here. But first and foremost, if you're talking about that Ayton-Paul partnership, you have to extend that out to JaVale McGee. Cameron Payne, just to get some of the negative out of the way here quickly, I suppose, continues to really struggle. 13 minutes, 1 of 5 from the field, no turnovers, which is to his credit. He does struggle with that sometimes, so avoiding those is good. If you're not making shots, that's one thing, but you can't be giving the ball to the opposing team, so he's not doing that, but he is not lifting that bench unit. So what ended up needing to happen, very unorthodox, not typically, you don't think of opposing or backup centers being the players that really are the hub of a second unit. But in this case, a lot of that simple pick and roll offense. And in addition, with how much the Pelicans were switching, that's a lot of how Ayton was able to get going. He was making some nifty hook shots, some fall away jumpers, just using his incredible touch over the likes of Larry Nance and even Valanciunas, which isn't really a mismatch, but he was getting it done. Herb Jones off switches when Jones was guarding Chris Paul. McGee did the same exact thing. And in a lot of cases, it was also Nance, but in addition, Najee Marshall, who I have been talking up. I've been crushing on Najee Marshall a little bit in this series, and McGee handed it to him. A lot of the moments when Najee was on the floor, he had 4 fouls in 11 minutes and did not look great. So the Suns were able to take advantage of that. Pick and roll if it was there, but then if it wasn't, back it out, reset, get the ball into the post, and that's how they were able to survive in some of those bench minutes. Payne, despite his struggles, he was a +4 out there. And McGee was a -9, but I don't think that tells the full story. He, for all intents and purposes, was the only bench player who was playing well at all offensively. Landry Shamet at 2 of 7 from the field. He had 2 nice dunks, but those are the only shots he ended up making. He was struggling out there. He turned the ball over in a couple bad spots. Torrey Craig continues to be a minus offensively, although he did look a little bit more ready to guard Brandon Ingram, which is nice to see. And that's actually where I want to go with the Pelican side of things. So I can't go too much further without acknowledging that Ingram and McCollum were fantastic. 30 points, 7 assists from McCollum. Continues to be a threat on those pull-up jumpers, those pull-up threes. And Ingram is not guardable. 34 points, 9 of 10 from the free throw line, continues to draw fouls, made his threes, played with consistent energy and intensity like he has been doing. The one difference for Ingram tonight was that he did not have the assists. The Pelicans as a team had 38 made shots, 17 assists. Compare that to the Suns, who had 44 made shots, but 26 assists, almost 10 more than the Pelicans had. So without Ingram distributing for his teammates, his impact was a little bit quieter. I mentioned that Craig was a little bit more effective on him, but the real frightening moment, if there was one for the Suns in this game, was when Ingram started to get cooking in that third quarter, which continues to be the Pelicans just absolute owning the third quarter. 31-22, third period in this game. And that was when Ingram was really rocking. And the moment that I'm talking about in specific was when Bridges guarded him. Bridges was not effective doing that whatsoever. Crowder left the game. in part because of foul trouble, probably in part because his shot wasn't going down and Monty was trying other guys. And Bridges ended up out on Ingram for a moment, and it was ugly. It really was ugly. Because the thing is, here's why, in my opinion at least, I'm sure there's other aspects to it, but Ingram is longer and taller than Bridges. One of the only players in the entire NBA who can say that, but he is. So if you're not going to be able to contest or block Ingram's shot, what you need to do, which is the same thing we're seeing the Celtics do to Kevin Durant right now, it's the same thing we've seen teams try to do to Kawhi Leonard. When you have a guy who's as long and tall and crafty as Ingram is, and those other guys are, you have to play them physically. You have to knock them off of their spots. That's the only way that they're going to be uncomfortable. You're not going to get a hand in their face, right? You're going to have to play their body, bump them, make them, shoot off balance, that type of thing. And Bridges is not strong enough to do that against somebody in Ingram who's bigger than he is. So that's your answer for why Bridges has been guarding McCollum all this time. One, he's been able to keep McCollum pretty quiet, all things considered. And two, he is not somebody who really is going to be able to do much against Ingram. So we saw that tonight. Quieter assists, though, and Craig being able to do a little more, and Crowder holding up enough. Look, it's the playoffs. These guys are great scorers. Like, you might say, okay, 30 and 34. It wasn't the most efficient nights ever. Those guys were not. Ingram wasn't dishing out the assists. CJ was a little bit less efficient. He also misses free throws. And those are guys where 30 is great, but they're playing 40 minutes. So, they can go for 40 or 50, especially Ingram. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. It's not an excellent night. They didn't hold them to, the worst game of their careers. They didn't hold them to a number where the Suns were able to go out and win by 20, but they got the job done. A couple other things on the Pelicans side here, matchup-wise, and sort of looking forward to Game 4 a little bit as well here. The point guard spot is where I want to go. So McCollum is their acting point guard, but they played two other guys tonight. Interesting rotation adjustment from the jump here in Game 2 was Devontae Graham playing right away. He was I want to say the second sub into the game, maybe the third. I don't exactly remember, but he was able to be pretty impactful. First of all, the freaking rebounds, it's just going to be the death of all of us. The fact that Devontae Graham, who's the smallest guy on the floor, no matter who he's playing with, gets 5 rebounds, and Jose Alvarado in previous games has been up there as well, is its own separate conversation. I'm not going to really hit on the rebounding night because it was actually pretty even. Pelicans only had 11 offensive rebounds, so not a big deal, but just funny. The real way that Devontae hurt the Suns was he made shots, finally. He's been cold the entire postseason. Playing games 1 and 2 of this series. Graham's been playing here and there. I don't think he played in the Clippers play-in game, but he played in the first one, if I'm remembering right, and then he's played in both of the first 2 games of this series. And now finally, he was actually able to get hot a little bit. So he made 2 of his 3 threes right away. And I think he may have gotten to the free throw line in the first quarter too for 2 of his 4 free throw attempts. So from the jump, you're like, crap, because Graham is a guy who really can get hot. Like, that's the one thing. Yes, he's a shooter. Yes, he's a little bit of a scorer, but the biggest thing about him in terms of swinging games or the role that he's sort of supposed to fill is he is a heat check guy. Like, he is somebody who, if he makes his first couple, like, he can make 8 threes on you in a game. And so that was a big concern. It obviously didn't happen, but it still doesn't feel like the Suns are there in some cases when it comes to like Jaxson Hayes or in some cases Jose Alvarado, although I think they've learned their lesson there. They're going too much at mismatches, in my personal opinion. At the very beginning of this game with Hayes, which I'm going to get to close out the show, they were going so aggressively at the mismatch stuff. But yet when Graham's out there, they forget about it. They act like he's, like peak Mike Conley out there where he's undersized, but he's still going to be able to play defense. He's not. He's not a good defender. He's not an impactful defender. And they're kind of allowing Willie Green to get comfortable there. And it's like, they're escaping by the skin of their teeth that he didn't have a bigger offensive night because he started hot. They're not punishing him for being out there. And, they just got lucky that he missed shots and didn't end up playing a bigger role. The other point guard aspect of this game here from the Pelican side is Jose Alvarado, who I just mentioned. He had a stretch in that third quarter where I think he made 2 or 3 layups. Like he got all the way to the basket in moments where Ayton or McGee were out there and finished at the basket. Like he's like 5'10" and like 190 pounds or something. Like I do not understand. He might be less heavy than that. I don't understand how he has the impact that he does. I'm not even saying that it's some sort of fluke or anything like that. I think he's a good player. He hasn't been super efficient in the past games, but he is quick. He is physical. He's not afraid to go at the basket and make something happen. And he finished a couple of them through contact. So it's not to say anything grand about like, oh, the Suns miscommunicated or misexecuted this or that. It's just crazy. It's just like worth stating that Alvarado, the smallest dude out there most of the time, like Devontae Graham, is a genuine difference maker in this series. And when some of the other young players like Herb Jones and Trey Murphy were a little bit quieter in this game, Alvarado was just as impactful as he has been all series. So kudos to him. I do think that you can still go at him a little bit, but I also think the few post-ups of Chris Paul that we've seen when those smaller guys are out there are ugly shots. So that should not happen. And maybe you just live with Alvarado and hope he gets cold eventually and makes a couple mistakes. Or maybe you just figure, hey, we've been winning anyway. We've won 2 or 3. He can stay out there and we'll live with it. I don't know. Lastly, Jaxson Hayes should have probably started here maybe, but gets ejected 10 minutes into the game, or he played 10 minutes. Really ugly play. I don't know what the deal was exactly. I would like to give him the benefit of the doubt and say the Pelicans have had such an advantage on the offensive glass all season or all series. That's obviously a big focus for them when they miss shots in the half court, is to at least look at the glass, see if they have a path to go getting that loose ball. And in the most generous version of events, that's what he was doing. But we've seen him get putbacks. We've seen Valanciunas grabbing, tip offensive rebounds. They're doing it in a fair and like legal way. This was not that. This was, you can see Crowder chirping at him. Suns are obviously a little bit frustrated by Hayes. The leak outs were part of why Booker got injured. We saw, the pigeon and duck stuff coming out of game 1, and they're, disrespecting him a little bit that way. He's young. He has a chip on his shoulder, whatever it might be. He seems like he has some words for guys. And I think that's what happened, more so than the gracious, generous version of things. He got frustrated. He's mad. He's trying to prove himself. He's not getting the playing time he might want. He's hearing noise about how he's getting played off the floor and he doesn't fit in this series. And he's going to be the guy to sit down and be benched and this and that. And he said, okay, I'll show you. And he just absolutely blindsided Crowder, shoved him to the floor. It was not a box out. It was not, getting your backside into somebody. It wasn't any of that stuff. It was completely, utterly forearms extended, with a head of steam, plowing into Crowder, shoving him to the ground. And I was sort of surprised the ejection happened. You don't always see just a straight up ejection without, different events to point to for, okay, this technical was for that, this technical was for that, whatever. It didn't really, like, Crowder kind of came after him afterward, but it didn't become a fight. Like, the ejection was purely, you're playing dirty. Like, that's what it ended up being. So I would expect that will continue to, there will be some chippiness, some soreness, some sore feelings in game 4 on Sunday night. But look, these teams are playing evenly right now. As crazy as that sounds, as much as the odds were stacked against the Pelicans, somehow this is where we are. I do think the Suns obviously can make more threes in game 4. They were generating good ones. They have shooters. Crowder made that jumper late. It ended up being called a 2, but it was a very badly needed shot at a big moment. Maybe that can be the thing to get him out of his cold streak. You saw Cam Johnson make a couple. That was about it. They only made 4 total. So if they do that in game 4 and they play the rest of the other, as well in the other areas of the game as they did tonight in terms of ball movement, mismatch hunting, defense, they should win a little bit more handily. But we also know the Pelicans have their own advantages in this series. So I don't think this series is over. I don't think this game is just proof that this is all, a wash. But at the end of the day, again, a reminder, this Suns team is better. They've done it before. They've been here before. They have the experience, and they have the best talent between the two rosters. I'll be here Sunday night. Aaron Edwards will join me. We'll recap that game, see where this series goes. Until then, hit subscribe so you don't miss a thing, and I will talk to you guys later this weekend.